my pleasure now to welcome our three speakers tonight. First up, we've got Dr. Melanie Riwai-Couch, and she's the Kaihatu Māori and an education consultant at Evaluation Associates. She has worn and continues to wear many hats in education. She's been a teacher, a principal or tumuaki, a researcher, evaluator, teacher educator, and also a change manager. Next up, we've got Tufulasi Taleni, and he's Māori and Pasifika at the College of Education, Health and Human Development at the University of Canterbury, where he contributes into the initial teacher education programs and also encourages and supports Pasifika knowledge, learning content and contexts. And finally, we've got Ali Bull, who is a PLD consultant at Evaluation Associates. She's also worked in a wide range of roles within education, including as a teacher, middle leader in distance education, pre-service and in-service teacher education, assessment resource development, and research. And all three of them were part of a larger team that was researching and writing the report that's called School-Led Learning at Home, Voices of Parents of Māori and Pasifika Students. And this report, which I really encourage you to read, and we will be providing a link to it on our website, and also I think you can find it on the Evaluation Associates website as well. It details the results of a survey of the parents of Māori and Pasifika students that was conducted at the end of the first week of the lockdown period. And they had 134 parents respond to that survey. And tonight we're going to be exploring what some of the key findings were, and also what some of those implications are for schools looking forward. So welcome to the three of you. Really thrilled to have you here this evening, and really delighted that you're here to discuss what is a really fantastic, incredibly interesting and valuable report. So Melanie, first question to you this evening, and that's what's motivated you to undertake this research?
Oh, kia ora Nina, and thank you very much for having us this evening. I hope you can hear me. So the report that we did was a response to trying to gather parent voice in the very first week of learning that was happening in the homes where children weren't able to go to school. And it was basically motivated from a desire to really appreciate how parents were reacting, and what was working well for them, what wasn't working quite so well, and how things might be improved.
Yeah, and was there a particular reason for the focus on Māori and Pasifika parents in this particular report?
I guess the motivation for that for me, I work primarily in the area of Māori education or in culturally sustaining practice. So we know that Māori and Pasifika voices are quite often not well heard in this space, and we have an education system that hasn't delivered well for Māori and Pasifika students. So rather than waiting and maybe having their voice as a response down the track, we thought we would try and capture these voices right at the front end, so that there would be an opportunity for those Māori and Pasifika voices to actually feed into future decision making.
Mm. And we're going to dig into the findings and implications from the report as we go through this evening. But are there some key findings that you can share with us to sort of set up our discussion this evening?
Sure, absolutely. So firstly, I just want to say thank you to all of the parents who replied to the survey in the first instance. And we had quite a big return in the short time that the survey was up, and it was through social media. So it was only available to select people for a short period of time. But the volume of responses we received really communicated a desire to share about the experience that people were having. When we look at all of the data overall, and remember this was a very unique time, people were saying that, or nearly half of the respondents were saying that they were either happy or very happy with what was happening. And I think there was a real appreciation that schools were doing their best to respond in a very intense time in ways that they thought would best cater for students. But there were also, about a quarter of respondents who were saying, look, this isn't working out very well for us. There are things that can be improved. And I guess that's the sort of capture that that we're hoping for. And there were tensions and everything. Some parents were saying, hey, look, we need more guidance. We want to know exactly what this should look like. What is the structure? What are the resources? And then you had people at the other end saying, hey, look, we really enjoyed this freedom. This works out really, really well for us to not have to have all of the constraints that might exist with a required timetable. So, hard to please everyone all of the time, but there are some really beautiful insights in the survey that come through the voices of these parents of Māori and Pasifika students.
Yeah, and I think that idea of just the variety of experiences is something that's coming out a lot as people, both at this time, but also as people continue to reflect on what happened with schooling and education over this time, and that firstly there was, from schools, lots of different variety in terms of how they dealt with the situation, but then also huge variety in terms of how students actually responded to that too. And I know that we're going to come to look at some of those ideas in greater detail in just a little bit. I think one of the things that's really interesting for me coming out of the report is the terminology that you've used. There have been lots of different words for what we've just experienced: online learning, distance learning, remote learning, home learning, but you've chosen to use the term school-led learning at home. And I know that this is something that was quite an intentional decision and choice for you. Do you want to talk a little bit through your reasoning for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this paper was authored by quite a large group. I think it was 7 of us actually, and what the benefit of that was the sort of rich conversation and dialogue that was happening as we were able to sort of critique the thinking, and especially critiquing some of the assumptions we were making. So, we were talking and we were hearing things like online learning, virtual learning, distance learning. And in our discussions, it basically surfaced that all of those terms had a locus of power that was solidly grounded with the school. And that it could be construed that, therefore, if we said those were the only valid forms of learning, what about the learning that happens every day at home? And so we wanted to be quite specific that we were talking about the school-led learning, or the school-instigated learning that was now being introduced into the home space. So school-led learning at home for us captured the variety and myriad of all of the different types of learning that were being set up by the school to support their students while students were in lockdown.
And I know coming out of the report, there are some common themes that emerged quite consistently in a lot of what the participants were telling you. But I think what's also interesting is that there were some differences emerging between the parents of Māori students and parents of Pasifika students. And I think it'd be really useful for our audience if you could go into a bit of detail to talk through what some of those key themes and experiences were, and then also some of the differences that you found between different groups of parents.
Absolutely. So what I might do, Nina, is I might talk to some of the findings that came through the data set for the parents of Māori students, and then Tufulasi can speak to the Pasifika set.
Fantastic. Melanie, just before you launch into that, we've just had a question through that would, I think, be quite useful. So one of the questions is, did the survey include the parents of children at both mainstream schools and kura kaupapa Māori? And did you collect any data around that?
Yes, so we had respondents whose children were in both English and Māori medium, and different levels of Māori immersion. And we know that from some of the comments that were made by the respondents. We also know that there was a large number of primary and a large number of secondary, and many who had children in both primary and secondary at the same time, which was one of the complexities that was surfaced as parents were trying to juggle, in some instances, both different ages of students, but also Māori medium, English medium, and different level of immersion, all at the same time, and quite often in different ways, depending on what the schools had individually decided.
Brilliant. Sorry for that little interruption.
No,
but I think it's actually really useful to get an understanding of the breadth of participation.
Absolutely. So in terms of the Māori respondents, and the information that we have. I do want to just say, first of all, thank you to the voices who shared. We're really grateful to have been given the opportunity to work with the responses they had. And in the report, for those of you who have a look at the report, we deliberately don't make any recommendations. What we've done is we've provided a series of questions that we feel follow quite well from the findings, in a way that will help prompt schools, teachers, principals to consider how well those views align with the Māori and Pasifika communities from their own schools. Because, of course, we have a collection of voices in our survey, but they may not be an inaccurate reflection of each individual setting. But the findings for the Māori parents in the survey, the things that I think maybe if I just touch on, maybe one of the areas of the things that they thought were working really well, some of the things they thought weren't working quite so well, and their suggestions for improvements. A really strong theme from the parents of Māori students was around mana motuhake o te whānau, and how this opportunity was giving them an opportunity to appreciate their own children as learners, and then to make decisions about how to facilitate that learning in their own space. And so that included things like deciding what was happening and when and how, who the most appropriate person to facilitate it was within their own bubble. It may have been grandparents or otherwise, and that opportunity to connect in that educational sphere in their home. In terms of things that weren't working quite so well, some of the things that were raised broadly, which I think we know and we appreciate right across the country, was around equity and access and the challenges for that. But Māori parents did identify that there was some difference in terms of resources they were receiving for materials for their children, depending on the decile of the school their children were at. And also for Māori medium, that it was much more difficult for some parents who may not have felt like they had the language proficiency to support their children with their learning that would have been delivered through Te Reo Māori. So that kind of was a bit of a difficulty, and there's one parent made the comment in particular that she had children who were at different levels of immersion, the challenge she had trying to facilitate for each of them. With that, in terms of improvements, parents did ask for the opportunity to know how they could support their children better. One quote was that they wanted training offered for parents and caregivers at home to support how the learning can be done, and to have the support network to be able to pitch scenarios to a teacher in order to best support. And they had some really good ideas moving forward about how we could have a coaching model to better support the parents in a desire to get on board with what the school was organising so that they could do that.
Tufulasi, do you want to pick up and cover some of the themes coming out for Pasifika parents?
Yeah, thank you very much, Nina. First of all, ngā mihi nui ki a tātou katoa. Pa talo whātu ni sa pulubinaka, taloha ni, ki orana, malo ililei, halo holaketa, and warm Pasifika greetings. It's an honor really to be here this evening among my colleagues in terms of sharing this kaupapa, very important kaupapa tonight. I think Melanie actually touched particularly really on Māori parents. So I am going to just have a look at the share about the benefits as well from the responders, particularly Pasifika parents. I think, they really value, in terms of benefits, they really value the time they have at home with their own children and the connection really they have at home. Also, I think the parents as well, they feel they actually understand the child as a learner. I think it's something that they see themselves, and particularly in this quite a lengthy period of time, that they actually see their children as learners, and also able to make own decisions. I think I think that opportunity really for parents to be given that opportunity to have some sort of control for learning happening at home. And also they can see the curriculum can be tailored to their children. I guess in terms of their own input, bringing their own cultural aspect or context into the learning, into the curriculum. I think they see the opportunity there really to showcase their own strength and their culture. Their own cultural capital and also funds of knowledge that our Pasifika parents do have, and this is the opportunity. They see that, and also they find that this is a very safe and peaceful environment really for them. And another really big one in terms of benefits is Pasifika parents feel that their children are actually learning in a more culturally and spiritually responsive environment where they can provide. They can see their children feel safe in that area as well. And in terms of concerns really from parents, I think it's as they develop I guess good relationship at home. At the same time too, they kind of sort of feel that they have lack of I guess their own connection with their own peers back at school, and also really the distraction with study at home. At times maybe television and other things are happening around there as well, and also concern about the risk children will not achieve their goals. Particularly really in terms of not meeting the curriculum expectations and all that. And also parents sort of feel stressed about not having, the subject knowledge. And it really depends on the parents that responded, but those who may feel inadequate in that way, that they may not have the content knowledge, particularly with children at the secondary school level, NCA and others, and also I think around the lack of guidance about expectation really for children at home, and also the inadequate of curriculum, and also equitable access to learning. I think all those kinds of concerns are coming through from parents. Just a couple about improvements. I mean, they, as Melanie mentioned before, they come up with some really good ideas as well in terms of improvement. Access to technology and resources. They need more support to facilitate learning at home, and also I think it is so important for Pasifika parents really to have that very clear communication, improve the communication and clarity about expectation at home in terms of structure, and the program happening at home, and also the increase in structure and also the scheduling of learning at home, and also increase the social interaction with their peers. And of course the content that aligns with children, I guess interest. I think those are some of the things that they may have. Those the programs that they provide for for children at home, they may have I guess have that connection to children's interest, and of course connected to their own cultural context at home. Yeah. So these are some of these. From the Pasifika parents' voices.
Yeah, some really fascinating learnings coming out there, and I think things that apply to the very specific context that we've been in, but also some lessons to come out for people thinking ahead to going back to school next week. And I guess one of the things that's really emerged quite strongly from your report is the importance of homeschool partnerships. And also, I guess, some of the things that it's really important for schools to be thinking about when they think about how they can support and improve homeschool partnerships and what those look like. And I think, Ali, you are going to pick up on some of these ideas around homeschool partnerships and what the report may offer and provide in that area, and sort of food for thought for schools looking ahead.
Kia ora, ka nui ngā mihi kia koutou. Yeah, we haven't got kind of specific recommendations because it wasn't that sort of project. This was like a probe to see what happened, and all sorts of really interesting wonderings occurred. And so one of the things, we didn't specifically ask about homeschool partnerships, but one of the things that came out very strongly was a lot of parents seemed to really enjoy the opportunity to get to know their own children better as learners, like where they were at their learning, what they were good at, what their challenges were, the progress they were making. And for me, that brought up a whole lot of worries about, well, what is the partnership and the nature of the partnership between schools and families? Because we all know schools put a lot of effort into reporting and communicating what's happening at school. So there seemed to be some sort of disconnect. So either the messages weren't being said in a way that could be heard, or they weren't the things that the families really wanted to know about. So this seemed to be like a really fertile ground to probe a bit further. And that was quite an interesting thing, I think, that schools might want to pick up on. So how much do we really know about what families want to know about their children's progress, and what's the best way of communicating that? And are there opportunities for families to ask the questions as well as being given the information from schools? So that was a really big thing that came out for me. And I guess the other thing that was particularly interesting for me was there was quite a lot of anxiety around, is my child getting behind? Are they making sufficient progress? And there was this very sort of prevalent view of learning as quite a linear trajectory. And for me, there's that whole thing about the front end of the New Zealand curriculum and the marautanga, which has got, you know, the importance of the holistic learner. You know, the vision of NZC is confident, connected, actively involved, lifelong learners. So valuing the learning that happens outside school as well, and what sorts of things we could do to help kids mediate across the boundary between home and school. So rather than thinking, oh, we're missing out on school learning at the moment, think of all the value that we're getting from this home learning that's been happening that wasn't school-led home learning. So how do we kind of mediate that going forward? So lots of questions.
Yeah, and definitely lots of things and lots of areas for schools to be probing and to be thinking further about. And I just encourage everyone to keep asking questions, and we will be feeding those into the conversation. What I'd be really interested to get each of you to touch on and to explore now is what you see as some of the key lessons coming out of the report, what you think schools should or could be thinking about from, well, now and obviously next week on, when they get children physically back in their schools. And are there particular questions that they should be asking? Are there particular areas they need to be focusing on? Are there particular actions that they should be taking? And I guess just to feed in a couple of questions from our audience for you to think about in that as well, is we have had some questions about, obviously this survey was done after just the first week of the lockdown period, and are you considering doing any follow-up work to see what experiences are like now after obviously a more extended period of time, and also once children go back into schools? And we've also had a question, if you could expand upon, Melanie, it was you who talked about the potential for a coaching model between schools and parents to help support them as well. So if you might want to touch on that as well, but it'd be really great to just get your thoughts on key lessons and where schools can go next.
Sure, maybe I'll start off, Nina. You asked at the beginning about some of the things that stood out for us, and I want to talk about maybe challenging some of our assumptions that we have about what experiences are like for people. And I noticed in some of the communications, and it was discussed with a colleague during the week, how, you know, the communications are when kids come back to school, you know, the importance of that welfare check-in as soon as they get back, you know, which is great. It's good to check on student well-being, and well-being is very important. But the wondering is if underneath that there's an assumption that this has not been a good thing for our students. And for many students, this has been a positive experience in that they've been at home, it has been safe, they've been with people who are familiar to them, whose language they understand their social cues, their body language, the expectations are clearer. They haven't had to go from class to class to class and interpret, a lot of stuff from a lot of other people. And so actually the anxiety may not be about having been at home. The anxiety may actually be for those students returning to school. And so we need, there are multiple lenses here that we need to consider. And that was definitely one of the things that came through the report, was that home can be a safe and calm place, and our children don't have to be as anxious. They know us, and that meant that it was a positive for those particular families. Another thing that I'd like to just provide as a bit of a provocation is, when I think about Māori homes, and I mean, I'm a mother, I have 5 of my own children, 4 of them are still in the school system. All of a sudden when this happened, the assumption was that it was okay for all of my children to be Zooming people into our home. And that was the thing, because that's what was decided. And when I look back at that, I wonder about the role of tikanga, and I wonder about what that looks like, because our homes are sacred spaces. And generally there are protocols that go with entering into a home, particularly a home that exercises cultural values, or there are rules of engagement that exist culturally. And it's not that I think Zooming was wrong, but I wonder if we actually thought about it. Was there a conversation had to see what that might look like? And so I think moving forward, there is a real opportunity to unpick this. Now, this survey absolutely happened in that very first week. It was about front-end reactions. We cannot go back and survey exactly the same people, but we are very, very interested in the ongoing conversation and how we can promote positive conversations and partnership between parents and their school communities. There is some work that we will look at leading, but ultimately, we really want to encourage that relationship to be happening at a school level between the families and the schools themselves. And I think the reason we want that to happen that way is there are different ways that partnership can present. And sometimes when we're in schools, we think that telling parents what is happening is partnership. And I don't believe that is really, it doesn't really meet the threshold of what partnership might look like. Certainly not as I understand it through a Te Tiriti or Waitangi lens. So rather than having parents as just those informed consumers where the school is saying, we are doing this is what your child does, this is what we've put in place, how do you move that to a place where the parents are determining contributors in the education of their children? And we know that, parents are first educators of our children. We're capable, we know our kids. We call teachers whaia and matua or koka, for a reason, because of that parent role and that respect as educators, that exists in that relationship. So moving forward, I would really like to see how we can move forward in a way where the learnings during the lockdown period that enhanced the teaching and learning experience for kids and the experience of the parents can be carried into that space. And I believe if we can do that, then it's an opportunity to disrupt and maybe challenge some of the long-standing assumptions that we have about what works. Because sometimes in schools, we're all experts. We know what's best because that's what, we do as our job. So I feel like actually we need to address that sort of, that way of perceiving power, and actually, you know what? A powerful partnership is one where families and the school can have that ongoing dialogue. And it's not just Māori parents commenting about kapahaka or te reo Māori, although those things are very, very important. but we have interest in our kids being the very best scientists, the very best health professionals, the very best musicians, all of those things at the same time as their identity, language, and culture is an asset to that journey. And that's so that our kids are strongly positioned to do what they need to do in order to feed back into our communities, into our whānau, iwi, and hapu at the same time. So I guess that's probably the three things for me that are pertinent from the report. I'll hand over to Tufulasi.
Kia ora tātou. Just Talawhatu, just add to that. I think we all know that this is a new experience to everybody. New experience to all the parents, a new experience to schools as well. And I guess one of the things really I have to say again is the acknowledgement to all the schools for a huge undertaking really on this particular exercise. As I said before, it's a new experience for everybody really. And I think the key things really I can, having some conversation recently with our own Pasifika parents, I guess the key thing really for our Pasifika parents is the health and well-being. I think the importance is so important. I think the anxiety and the stress that is caused by this whole experience really. And I think some of the things in a conversation I had with them is I think it's very much focused on the I guess these psychological effect that actually cause on our impact on the children really in this. And I think this is the area that as we know that the voice coming through really from some Pasifika parents they have that fear of for their children not to meet the curriculum expectation, but I think it's something more important than that, and that is very much I guess the encouragement really to go to our Pasifika parents. I think is something more important than that is that making sure that the kids are safe and making sure that the kids feel positive about going back to school. And also, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of the close connection between schools and home. I think that's something that we need to focus a lot more. I know that a lot of schools are doing this, but I think the question is, have we done enough in terms of building that strong I guess relationship between schools, a partnership between schools and home. When something like this happen again, I think I think it's important that the parents actually know the school very well, and same as the school actually know the dynamics and all that, what is happening in different homes and all that. So I think for me, really, I think that is very important. Children actually going back, making sure that they are positive. They feel positive about themselves, making, making a start again, rather than worrying about that they may fall behind in terms of curriculum expectations or NCA, and I think it's important really for our children to prepare well, to feel good about themselves, and I'm sure our schools are very much prepare for that to welcome their student back, particularly when they're coming back. So those are really some of the key things I can think of. Nina, I can suggest again also support the importance of homeschool partnership, that we need to do more and more and more, so that schools can really know what is happening in homes, in Pasifika homes, same as our homes feel good, feel comfortable actually making those connections with our schools.
Some really valuable insights here. Thank you, Tufulasi. And Ali, how about for you, particular lessons or things that schools should be thinking about coming out of this piece of research?
For me, it's a hope really that this period of disruption we've had hopefully we can continue the learning from it to do something quite different as we move on, hoping that we're not just going to fall back into the comfortable old ways of doing things. For me, it's an opportunity for us to create collectively a better education system for all our learners. And I think for me, it's important for schools to explore ways of building those really collaborative partnerships and whose voices need to be heard and who are the best people to gather that voice as well. You know, how do we actually share the power more than currently happens? And so I guess for me, every context is going to be different, and that will be the exciting thing. If we get a whole lot of schools and communities all trying different things, then hopefully we'll find some ways that really will be helpful for moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so many valuable pieces of learning coming out, both from this report and also from the discussion this evening. And I think thinking ahead, there's going to be an opportunity for schools to really think about how they work and collect student voice and parent voice to help them inform their next steps and what that looks like. Because if you really do want to create those true partnerships and to create far more of a balance within the power, there is going to need to be that opportunity to really connect in and collect that voice from both the students and the parents. And I don't know if any of you have any ideas for how schools might be able to start thinking about undertaking some of that work.
Sure, I'll come back to me, because that seems to be the order we've followed. Absolutely. I mean, you know, ko te kaia te rangatira te kōrero, you know, that power of talking and actually beginning. And I think beginning and having those conversations without knowing the answers is okay. To challenge our own assumptions. We used a very basic survey, and a lot of teachers have asked me, well, what questions did you ask? Because we're keen to now ask our own communities. And so the questions that we asked were very simple. What worked well that you'd like to see more of? What were you concerned about? How could this have been improved for you? And I think there's a lot of power just in keeping things really, really simple and having those conversations. A survey may not be the way that works for you with your community. Face-to-face is often really beneficial, but talk to kids, talk to parents. There is a bit of a risk of evaluation fatigue or survey fatigue, because people now are kind of going, oh, now we've really got to find out, and there's a lot of, you know, gathering going on. But I really believe the best place to gather is close to home, and in a way where that information is genuinely used to help inform decisions. What I would suggest, though, is if you gather those voices, don't then go and make good decisions for these families. Invite those families to the table to decide what the best decisions are that are going to work for those families to support their children in your school context. And I think that's modelling that collaboration right the way through. So it's working with communities rather than doing things to communities.
I guess, yes, follow up on Mel. I think absolutely, for me, in my own experience of working with Pasifika, I think designing a local curriculum more, you know, the inclusion of our own Pasifika context a lot more really into our curriculum. As we all know that, you know, something I always encourage our teachers that I've been working with, and even now in this particular space, that the engagement is so important, and that engagement of our Pasifika children actually comes from a curriculum that our children can see themselves in it. That means the utilization of our own culture into there. There is always an expectation for our Pasifika parents, high expectation for Pasifika parents that, you know, for their children to achieve academically, and at the same time, fear of losing their identity, language, and culture in the process of achieving. And I absolutely, I think we have to ask ourselves the question, have we done enough really to find out more about our Pasifika families? And I think, the good practice that we are able to implement and utilize in our own practice in the classroom actually come from the contribution of our parents. And I think the more, the relationship that we build with our parents and being able to, bring their voice into the classroom, I'm sure that we can actually build, put together or develop that local, curriculum that utilize, our own cultural context and things like that, that are Pasifika, that will engage our Pasifika children into that curriculum,
And Ellie, did you have anything else to add about the collection of student and parent voice?
No, I don't think I have. Thanks.
I think Melanie and Tufulasi gave an incredibly comprehensive view of things to think about, and I think hugely powerful ideas for educators to be taking forward. Look, we are very quickly running out of time. Time seems to fly on these webinars. I know that at the beginning our speakers were a little bit concerned that we may not have enough to talk about, but I don't think that's the case here. So I guess just to wrap up, I don't know whether each of you wanted to just give, say, a 30-second overview of key takeaways that you'd really like our audience here this evening to take with them.
Yes, and I'll start. So I've got 4 key takeaways and an invitation. First takeaway is that parents have valuable perspectives. Māori and Pasifika families have perspectives that can help make all of the difference to successfully connecting with our Māori and Pasifika children and youth in schools. The second is that this is a great opportunity for partnership, crisis or not. It's always the right time to be strengthening homeschool partnerships. The third is let's capture and build on the learning. Let's figure out what this means to us. Let's figure out how it's impacted on our communities and how we can use that as a springboard into a hopeful future like what Ellie described. And the fourth one is that this was new for everyone doing their absolute best with what they had at the time. And I would hope that if this happens again, heaven forbid, in 9 months or 12 months time, that when we respond at that time, that we're able to do so in a more refined way that will provide better opportunities for our Māori and Pasifika students. The invitation I'd like to make, and I really hope, Nina, you're able to save the chat feed so we can reflect on all of the questions that have come through as well, is that if there are schools or teachers who are kind of grappling with, what does this look like in our space, and if you would like to have a conversation with us, with me, with the co-authors at any time, you're welcome to send me an email, which you can get from the evaluate.co.nz website. And we are hopeful that we will have some additional supports and opportunities in the near future where we might be able to do both working with specific schools in Kahui Ako who might be interested, but also in being able to share some more examples that might be of benefit to more schools. So please do contact us.
Tufulasi, do you have a quick key
Yes,
finishing points?
I've got 5 seconds. I think absolutely the value of Pasifika parents' voice, or our parents' voice. I think that is key, really. I often think about a lot of our own Pasifika parents actually coming from Samoa. Or from the Pacific without, unfortunately, formal education, and the complexity of our New Zealand system, the terminologies we use. So this is why it's so important, really, for our school to be patient, really, with them in terms of finding out about that voice. So the power really comes from the voice of our parents, so that when our school know more about our parents and those complexities and those challenges that they go through, the better they will see the outcomes of learning and achievement for their children. Kia ora.
Ellie.
Finally, for me, I just think just 2 things. The first is there is quite a focus on developing local curriculum at the moment from the ministry, and to me this is a wonderful opportunity to really think about local curriculum and get the voices of the whole community involved. That would be number 1. And the number 2 thing for me is quite a personal thing. It's the importance of becoming a better listener. Like, as a Pākehā, middle-aged, no, maybe late middle-aged, middle-class educator, like thinking you don't have to solve the problems. What I need to do is to listen, and to listen to everybody that's involved, and together we can solve things, I think. So that would be my key takeaway point.
That's wonderful. Well, look, you have given everyone here so much food for thought this evening, and I know that just looking at the chat coming in, and just so many people just were so grateful for what you've shared this evening. I think it's an incredibly empowering message for our educators about what is possible and what they can be doing. And just I share with everyone, I'm sure, who's on this evening, to just say thank you so much, both for undertaking this research, but also for coming this evening to share with us. And absolutely, I would encourage everyone, if you or your school or kahui are interested in taking some of these ideas and this work further, I think it would be fantastic if you could reach out to Melanie and to Evaluation Associates. And just before we end, I just want to add that the Education Hub is in the middle of doing a piece of work where we are collecting the voices of educators, parents, and school students. And all we're asking people to do is to write a written reflection on their experiences of learning and education during the lockdown period. We're not asking for it to be long. It doesn't need to be beautifully written. We're just interested in the key ideas. So we do encourage you to undertake that. It is available on our website. We would really value the responses, and we will be sharing those publicly afterwards. And just to end tonight, to say thank you so much again to our 3 speakers. It's been a really valuable and wonderful conversation, and I know I personally really look forward to seeing what further work you're going to do in this area. So thank you so much for joining us here this evening. And have a lovely evening, everyone.
You're welcome. Ko Māori.
Thank you. Ko Māori. Tufulasi 4.